Welcome back to the weekly movie and TV roundup that is not yet so weekly, but we'll get there. We'll go over the worst, the best, and everything in between that has released over the last somewhat week-ish, maybe even 2 weeks. If you haven't checked it out yet, on the Quiet on Set podcast, we did a review for The Boy and the Heron and for Wonka, and this upcoming week, we are gonna cover Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. But in the meantime, let's have a look at some of the worst stuff that came out this week. Kicking it off is the Netflix movie Leave the World Behind. Was adapted from a novel that came out in 2020. And this one just had a lot of end-of-the-world scenario things that were going on. But the characters kind of spoke in a way that felt like they were translated one-to-one from page to screen, and it just didn't really work. A bit of a missed opportunity to me because there was clearly something there. It just didn't really work in this Netflix movie. Next up, we got Silent Night. John Woo is back with another movie that is with an American cast. To me, this movie is very gimmicky. If you love these high kinetic action movies, you might disagree vehemently with my take of putting it into the bad tier for the week. But to me, it was very gimmicky in the way that it's a silent movie. Overall, it's a silent movie. They don't talk. And some of the characters should talk. Even stylistic choices can't really save this. I think the lead, Joel McKinnon, is actually pretty good in this. The action's pretty solid. I just could not get engrossed into the story, and an action movie kind of needs that a bit from me because I'm not the biggest action guy. But hey, it might work better for you. Migration, Illumination. Actually, this year I watched every single Illumination movie, and I haven't made a video about it yet. So I question myself, why? Why? The big question, why? Why did I watch all of this? It wasn't ultimately to lead up to Migration, which feels like counter programming coming out in the same week or a week after Chicken Run 2 comes out, which we'll get to later on. This one is just so generic, you can kind of sense where they're going, which isn't just the South because they're flying in the South. That's the story of the movie. But you can sense where they're going a mile away, and it's just not that funny. It's just like the typical Illumination, everyone crashes into each other type of humor, and I'm not free, so that doesn't really hit. And I wouldn't really show this to kids. Stay clear of it. Family Plan. Oh yeah, speaking of family, no, it wasn't Netflix, this is Apple. Apple can also make bad movies, apparently. Not just Killers of the Flower Moon, that's great, but apparently also this. This feels like a Frankenstein monster of similar type-ish movies. I mean, you can just look at the poster and kind of get the vibe of this film. It's about a guy who's retired and he doesn't want to come back, but the past catches up to him. And his suburban family life is so different from the violent, crime-filled life he has lived before. And it's exactly that. But then there's also a bunch of cringy attempts to incorporate some Gen Z-isms into it. There's a bunch of Valorant in this, for example. It's just not very good. And yeah, skip out on it. And then lastly, Finest Kind. Oh my god, this is a movie that's like, I would love to say it's so bad that it's kind of entertaining, but unfortunately it's just very boring. It kind of switches up in what its narrative is. I'd say it's a pretty overall uneventful drama about a younger brother who's disconnected from his older half-brother. Instead of going to law school, he wants to become a fisherman. Maybe there's something interesting in that, but then it just does a swift 180 and turns into a crime film. And it has some of the cringiest, but also funniest lines of the year. They also say Finest Kind about 20 times in this film, and I still don't completely know what it means, but yeah, skip out on that one. So we're up to the decent stuff of the week. I think Rick and Morty has had more hits than misses this season. It's the 7th season of the show. The episode that you can see here in the poster is probably the one that's the biggest highlight as well. I think it's episode 6 or something like that. There's a couple of really fun ones in there. The concepts are always imaginative and kind of current, as current as it can be with animation. But yeah, solidly entertaining, and I'd say a step up from season 5 and 6, which I didn't love. I think this one is another really solid run. And the departures that the series has, that's how I'll put it, are really unnoticeable. So great on them. I'm looking forward to the next season as well. Percy Jackson and the Olympians. The first 2 episodes of this should be out. This isn't me the first 4. I think it starts up pretty solid. The first episode is definitely the highlight. To me, it wasn't able to keep that level of engagement because it, I guess, pretty rapidly depends on having these kind of characters that are played by children, but that aren't children canonically. And to me, that's like some of the cringiest thing that you can do with children, because they just don't, there's just something missing usually. But overall, I never read the Percy Jackson books. I haven't seen any of the movies or TV shows, or if there's ever been anything before. This is the first time I'm watching anything from Percy Jackson, and I think it's a pretty solid introduction. So yeah, for the little ones, skip over Migration and instead go see Percy Jackson, I'd say. A Murder at the End of the World, definitely not for the little ones here. I think this show had a solid setup, and then by episode 2, I was like, okay, hopefully it's not this by the end of it. Like, this hopefully isn't the solution to this whole like murder mystery. And I called it, and it's the most obvious thing, and it's kind of boring, the way that they approach it, and it's been a huge letdown. I really didn't like the show by the end of it. Yeah, overall, I'd say it's not really worth checking out because they also drag it out a bit. But if you like murder mysteries, there might be something, but there's also not that much mystery as to who has done the deed, because in certain ways they never really set up that murder mystery stuff well enough. So you're wondering like, who could it be? And you're misdirected. It always kind of feels like you're ultimately going to that final reveal, and it's just a bit lackluster. Wonka. Okay, so there's an argument to be made that this should be in best. I just didn't completely connect with it. I think the musical numbers with the Mr. Timmy here on the front page just didn't really land. He's not a singer-dancer. As someone brought up that maybe Tom Holland would have been a better fit, and having seen those lip sync battles that he did, that they might be onto something there, but it's still charming. It's quite funny, and Paul King is just able to generate these really heartfelt moments that touch you and feels like you're getting a little treat, but it's never a full meal, a full course. You're kind of left wondering more about this character. He plays it pretty mysteriously, and that could be intriguing if there were more to his character, but he's just so openly naive and just cheerful and happy to share everything with the world. He's actually like eerily close to Paddington. I feel like there's a lot of parallels where you could just switch the bear with Wonka and it wouldn't really change that much. They got like a similar background and a similar story overall in this. But if you like the Paddington movies, I'm sure you'll have a good time with Wonka as well. A Little Prayer is out in theaters in the States, and I'll give it a little recommendation. I don't want to say too much. A family drama where the father finds out that his son has been cheating on his wife, and as a father-in-law, he's very connected to the wife, but not as much to his son. And there's a whole lot of small drama that comes from there. It's a pretty familiar story overall, but there's some solid performances in there. So a light recommendation on my end. The Taste of Things, the French submission for the Oscars over Anatomy of a Fall, Anatomie d'une Chute. There's also like 17 different titles for this. The Pot au Feu was at one point the one in Cannes that they named. Well, it's now The Taste of Things, and it will make you hungry. It's a long movie about love and food. It opens up with like, I think a 30-minute long scene where they're just preparing food. Whenever you kind of get hungry from seeing Studio Ghibli food prepared, this is the version in live action. I think overall it's a very well-made movie, technically and directed and performed as well. But the love story that's ultimately at the center of this feast leaves a bit to be desired. Anselm, the one of two Wim Wenders movies we got to stay. The other one is my favorite of the year, and we'll talk about that next week. Anselm is a documentary about the artist that you can see here on the poster. This was also shot in 3D. I did see it in 3D. It was an interesting use of 3D in 2023, but the story overall, I think, is compelling. There's just not a lot to be uncovered from him as an artist because he's very upfront with who he is. It's more of like a presentation on his art and his person, if you weren't familiar, but it's not really doing a character study on him or anything. La Théorème de Marguerite, The Theory of Margaret, I guess. Another French film about someone who really loves math, but then also meets someone that she could fall in love with. And it's about love and math. And if you love those two things, you'll probably be in love with this film. I don't. I still like this film. It's very French, if if that means anything to you. But that's that. And Cat Person. This premiered at Sundance. I got to see it at the Zurich Film Festival, but there was a technical issue, so it cut out, like it flickered for me, or it buffered in a sense, as if you're streaming. That was my festival experience, and this finally dropped on VOD. Yeah, it's about like gender dynamics and very much in the fictionalized kind of manifested and imagined perspective of the central character here, played by Emilia Jones. She's dating this guy, and it's not really clear if he's a good guy or a bad guy, or are there any good guys, or yeah, what's his intention and stuff like that. Ultimately, I think this movie really wants to have a bombastic ending. That's the only thing that I rewatched as well for this, because I've seen most of the film with like bufferings in between. But it just wasn't very good. I think it had some solid comedy moments, but ultimately the overall package, I think, is kind of lackluster, which I guess for a sex drama does make sense when you talk about a disappointing package. Lastly, Blue Jean. This is a queer story about a teacher in, I think, the Margaret Thatcher era, where it was outlawed. I've seen this a while ago, actually, but it's now out in theaters and will be on VOD, I think, soon. Put this on your watch list if you're interested in that. And it's a really engaging story about this gym teacher. It's shot on film as well. It's got a nice look to itself, so go check it out. And then finally, now, how can I forget about the Queen? Now, not putting this in best is probably a war crime to some Swifties, but I think this is really solid. I think it's overall just the direction, the placements of the camera and stuff, where I was like, okay, we could have improved the overall staging of this maybe a tiny bit, but it's incredibly impressive what Taylor Swift did here with her Eras Tour. Just overall, this like really long, 3-hour-long performance where she goes over all of the different eras and a lot of songs that she performs. There's costume changes, constant dancing, really good singing as well. Just overall a great package for people who maybe attended even the concerts and wanted to relive them. People who didn't get to go and now had this experience in theaters and now at home for 1989. It's a little reference there. You can rent it, and probably later on it will land on some streaming deal and should make another pretty buck of this, because this did super well in the box office, and it's one of the most intriguing box office stories of the year. And yeah, huge success. But overall, I'm not the biggest fan of her music, so if I had connected a bit more with that, I guess, then it would have been one of the best films of the week to me. But hey, it's indecent. I don't need to justify it anymore. So there's another one, Indecent, Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget. I really love the original Chicken Run. I don't eat meat now, so I don't know if that did anything to me when I was younger. Well, actually, I did for a while, so I don't know, it didn't have an effect on me, but I rewatched it this week, and it was just so many moments where I like flashed back and I was like, okay, that was ingrained into my mind, because it's a really disturbing film to watch as a kid. And this did feel a bit cookie cutter to me, where it wasn't really getting to anything super interesting. It was basically a big heist movie, and the first one was that as well. It was about escaping, and there's still like really scary imagery in here at times, and it was a bit bland, and I do prefer some spice with my chicken, although I don't eat chicken. Overall, I think it's a worthwhile sequel, but it didn't blow me away, and I was really expecting this to be one of the best animated movies of the year, and it wasn't really that to me, but still worth checking out. It's out on Netflix now. All right, the best of the week, and we're kicking it off with Poor Things. Yorgos Lanthimos, Emma Stone's probably best performance, Willem Dafoe, Mark Ruffalo's best performance, likely. Some incredible stuff in here. The writing is impeccable. The production design is incredible. And yeah, the performances are mesmerizing. The screenplay is great. It's tight. The direction is cool. Yes, it's cool. The way that he uses wide angle, like these ultra, like I think 8mm lenses to kind of peer back our perspective into this weirdly over-the-top world is incredibly entertaining. Go check it out. Go check it out. It's out in theaters, I think, now. The Boy and the Heron. Now, we do have a full spoiler review for that one on the Quiet on Set podcast. Revisiting it just like, I guess, in my mind, because it's also been a while since I've seen this one, made me appreciate how much of Hayao Miyazaki as an artist, as a filmmaker, is in it. I definitely want to revisit it. I like it more now in memory than I did in actuality when I watched it, but it's Studio Ghibli. You can't miss out on it. And if you haven't seen any of the other Studio Ghibli films and you're getting Netflix to go watch, I guess not Leave the World Behind, but Chicken Run, then go see a couple of the Studio Ghibli films. A lot of them are streaming on Netflix. Yeah, really solid. Origin, so Ava DuVernay's latest movie. I don't think she's made a movie that hasn't made me cry and made me think about the subject matter for a while. She has some incredible work in her filmography, and this is yet another really, really engaging story that basically dramatizes the story behind someone who wrote a thesis about the caste system, and within that, certain subgroups that are affected by caste, that kind of globalizes it through the lens of the caste system in India and racism in the States and worldwide as well. And then also the Second World War and what Nazis did there. It's really compelling. It's something where there's a lot of characters talking, but it's, to me, at least, it was never boring. It's incredibly impressive what she did with adapting a thesis, essentially. And yeah, go check it out if you can. The Teacher's Lounge, I gotta say that in the most German way possible, though I'm not German, I'm Swiss. But it's a German submission to the Oscars, and I think it's worth getting to be that pick. As someone who's worked as mainly a substitute teacher, I still saw a lot of, like, I guess, some of the drama that goes on in the teacher's room or maybe in schools overall. And although it was like a domino piece fell over and pushed all of the subsequent ones for eternity, this was filled with so much tension and actually like really good performances. I really liked it, so yeah, go give it a try if you can. It's out on VOD now. And then Maestro, to complete your worthwhile Netflix subscription, you also get the latest from Bradley Cooper in probably his best film so far. This also played at Venice, and I got to see it there on the big screen, and now it's not really playing in theaters anymore. I guess you're missing out a bit because especially the sound on this is incredible. This is one of Carey Mulligan's best performances, certainly one of Bradley Cooper's best performances. It's got some really stunning directing. Some people have been saying to me that they like the second half way more, where it gets to be more of a character study. I really like the first half quite a bit because there's a constantly moving camera. It's just a lot of kinetic energy that is then matched with like a lot of great music as well. This was a pleasure to see. But that's it for this week. Let me know what you've been watching this week and what was the best, the worst, and everything in between. Go check out the Quiet on Set podcast. Leave a like and subscribe over here to not miss these weekly recaps and some reviews that I'm trying to get started again. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.